something to think about. Now, God talks to us in a lot of different ways. And one of the main ways He talks to us is through thought. But you have to be able to attune to that. You have to be able to open up to it. And we'll talk more about that. Now, how many people have ever heard God's voice? It's okay. I mean, I have only once in my life, but I did. Actually heard what I consider to be God's voice. Now, it is our inner thoughts and energy that creates action when we're talking about this. There's a gentleman named A.W. Tozer, and A.W. Tozer said, most Christians don't hear God's voice because we have already decided we aren't going to do what He asked. Now, I guess that's probably true in a lot of ways. The other thing, though, I think that we have to deal with is there is another thing that does not allow us to hear God's voice, or does not allow us to communicate with God, and that's ego. And anybody that knows me knows I have this fight with this ongoing battle with ego. So that's one of the things that we have to understand, is that sometimes we are blocked from hearing God's voice or communicating with God because we have an ego that gets out in front of us. All right? Now, let me set the stage a little bit about some of the things that have gone on. And I speak to you from me, okay? I don't profess to be an expert on this subject. I know what I do with my God. What you do with your God's up to you. But I do know what I do with my God. And I know that early on, when I was young, I was taught that God is up there. He's on the third cloud to the left. He's sitting there and He's judging. And that particular God had an anger management problem. If you didn't do certain things, then He was going to smite you. And I felt like I'd been smited a couple of times. But then the other thing that I had to deal with personally was, in Sunday school, you were taught. I remember when I was young and in Sunday school, they would say you have to pray, you have to bow your head. I always wanted to look up. I figured if we're talking to God, if we're praying to God, if something's going on, angels are all up there, I wanted to be able to see what was going on. But I'd always get this little gentle tap on the back of my head. Bow down. Bow down. So, it's how we communicate. To me, it's how we communicate with God. Now, the other thing that sort of sets the stage for this is the heaven and hell. You know, early on as a small child, heaven was up there. And it pearly gates and gold streets and clouds and harps and all that. Sort of boring, but that's what it was. But then the interesting thing too was hell. Where was hell? Well, hell's in the center of the earth, would tell me as I was young. So you can imagine, you've got a 7-year-old boy with a sidekick, Robbie McKnight, my best buddy in the whole wide world. We're digging a hole in the backyard. And we're about 2 foot deep. And my mother was a nurse, she worked the night shift. I was raised by a beautiful black lady, Annie Mae Ford, short of stature, large of voice. Annie Mae comes out in the backyard and it's, Lord help us, child, what are you doing? And I looked up and said very happily, we're going to hell. We're living our way to hell. I'm snatched up out of my hole. There goes Robbie, pulling his little shovel behind him, going home. I was sitting in my room to contemplate what it was. Now, I couldn't do a lot of contemplating because I really was trying to get there. But I did furnish Annie Mae with a week's worth of mumbling. Lord help us, what's that child going to do? Lord help us. She just mumbled for a whole week. So, I say all of that to tell you this. That's that God. so happy to be a part of unity and understand that there's a different God. I always knew that there was a different God for me, and one that is part of us. I am in God, and God is in me, as me. Jesus said, I am of the Father is in me. That's the God that you want to communicate with. That's the God that you want to. It's a spirit. And it's the fact that God is with us at all times. We don't have to go certain places. We don't have to do certain things. There's no rituals that you have to. You're open to communicate with God anytime, 24/7, 365. And that's what you need to do. Now, there's some things that I have to say to you in communication with God. I have one other short story that I love to tell this one, because you have to understand how to communicate with God. Dr. Gil Watson, Methodist minister that we love very, very much, Dr. Gil used to say he loved Krispy Kreme donuts. And on Tuesday mornings, when it was time for them to have the hot light on and all, he would have to go downtown to the church downtown. And he would always have a speak. He would always talk to God. And he said, God, if it's meant for me to have one of those Krispy Kreme donuts, there will be a parking space right in front of the Krispy Kreme. And he said, sure enough, I may have to run around the block 10 times. There's always that parking space right in front. Now that's a good God to communicate with. I like it. But there's some things here that we need to talk about. To be able to do this, to talk to God, and to open yourself up. And this is the basic principle that I work with. It's stop, look, listen, write it down, be open, and be patient. If you'll start doing those things, if you'll learn to trust your gut, if you'll learn to trust your instinct, you communicate with God. Now, I have to say, there's this other side over here that when you're communicating with God, sometimes Mr. Ego pops up and says, that's not God speaking, that's you, idiot. You're taking that. And you have to be able to control that. There's a balance that's there that you have to be able to work with. So communication with God is stop, look, listen. Write it down. Journal. Be open. That's one of the biggest ones. And be patient. I've just finished reading a great little book, Kinship to All Life. Joyce Oliver loaned that to Mimi, and Mimi gave it to her and said it's a must read. But this story is about a man learning how to communicate with this fabulous dog named Stoneheart. Strongheart, I'm sorry, Strongheart. And later on, he learns how to communicate with a fly, Freddy the fly. But the whole process of this is that what I'm talking about right there. He had to stop. He had to listen. He had to slow down. He had to have patience. And he had to understand how to communicate, not from here to here, but from here to here. And that's what you want to do with God. If God is okay with you communicating on that level, you don't have to bow down. You don't have to have special clothing. You don't have to have special words. You just have to talk to God. And you have to listen. The be patient part of it. Do we talk to God? Do we hear God? Does God talk to us? I do. I personally believe that He does. I have too many times in my life this happened. And I have one that just happened recently. As we were having a board meeting here, and Kevin was just finishing up our little chapel over here. And I walked out and I was marveling at what a great job. Beautiful job. Thank you, Kevin. And I kept there was something there. I walked back and I came all the way back down to the door, and I had to go back. And I went back and I looked and I looked, and there's something that was there. Couldn't put my finger on it. Came back, we went to the meeting, did fine. This goes forward to this Wednesday, this last Wednesday. I got ready for bed, lay down, eyes popped wide open. Mine's going 100 miles an hour. It's not going to work. So I got up and I started working on a little bit of this information. And about 30 minutes of that, it was quiet. I was in at Mimi's desk in the summer. It's quiet, it's a beautiful night. And I said, I'm going to do a little meditation. So I sat in my chair and I meditated. And I opened it up. I had no agenda. I said, God, I'm here. I'm listening. If you've got something, talk to me. Didn't hear anything. Didn't have any emotion. But it was beautiful meditation. I enjoyed it. Go back to bed. Head hits the pillow. Eyes pop wide open. God said, look at what you did. Look at what goes on. That little chapel is the foundation of this ministry. And it was sagging. It was hurting. It was leaning. It was not strong. And you people, congregation, the board, all put together, and we shored up that chapel. And God said, what else? What else? We shored up this ministry. Look at you. Look at what we've done. Look at what you've done. So you can't tell me God didn't talk to you. That's God talking to you. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the 10 things that we're supposed to talk about. There we are. I'm sorry. I don't want to keep you too long. I know this, one thing we love about this little church is it gets us out of here in time, and we can always beat the Baptist to the better restaurant. It's true. God helps. Okay, number one on my list was meditation. Now, the goal of prayer is to communicate with God. Meditation is a state of focused attention. It is no mistake that God chooses to talk to us inside our own minds. It is the most intimate communication possible. Now, think about, to me, one of the greatest ones is Psalms 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. What does he say? Be still and know that. Meditate, be still, and know that I am that I am. Now, the really great thing to me that I learned is I love meditation, but I had a little puppy dog that taught me how to meditate anywhere. I take my dog out to walk in the morning, and she finds a particular place that she likes to sniff. And for Sassy to sniff, it's going to take 2 to 3 minutes. She has to really figure it out, catalog it, make sure everything's all right. Who's been there, what other deal is, and all. So during that time, I have found that it's very comfortable. You can relax, close your eyes. You can meditate. You can meditate at your desk. Mary's taught us that we can meditate when we go to our labyrinth. And I appreciated that. Yvonne had this, she invited us to this beautiful church up in Highlands, and we went in and walked the labyrinth there. And if you're interested, we're going to be talking about a labyrinth here. More to come. Okay, meditation. Number 2, prayer. Can God talk to us through prayer? Yes, he can communicate to us. You have to listen. It's not that part of time where you're supposed to tell God what to do. Okay? Dear God, I need this, please please send it to me. It's not that, but it is a time where you communicate with God in prayer, and you listen, and then you've got to be able to capture these things. You've got to be open to what is going on, and that intuition, that little spark that's there, and move on it, and work with it. Trust your gut. That's a lot of it. Does that happen immediately? Not always. But there have been occasions when you will sit in prayer and it will be much more noticeable than it is in other times. But in prayer, open up. The third one, other people. Does God talk to us, communicate with us through other people? Amen. Yes, He does. Thank you, Barbara. I got an amen there. Love you, Dirk. There again, I have to give you my stories. Earlier this week, depressed. I get it every once in a while. I don't know. I wish I didn't, but I do. So I'm down. To the point that I used to have a friend tell me you need a roller skate because your butt's dragging. And that's how bad I felt. But the phone rings. And the person on the other end of that phone has a real problem. Sorry. They're hurting. They're sick. They're lonely. And they need help. Did God talk to me? Yeah. He said, help those people. Get off of your butt and do something. So that's you're open to that, and you realize when you're put in a place right there to do something. And you have to react to it. You have to be part of it. You have to stop, look, listen, be open to it. But yes, God talks to us through other people. Teachers, mothers, fathers. Nature and creation. I love that. In one sense, God is always speaking. All the life that we see out in nature, our people, including ourselves, is a result of God's wondrous words that have given us life and continue to sustain our lives. God reveals Himself to us in bird singing, into ocean waves, the flowers, and all of His creation. Quick story there. It's December. It's Christmas almost. My late wife and my kids are out. We're going to go into the woods and we're going to cut a Christmas tree. Beautiful cedar Christmas tree. Get up early that morning, we go into the woods, I drive, I park my car. I've been there many times, cut trees before. God parked my car right there. And normally you would get out of the car and walk right into the woods. Today, I went this way. Kids are saying, Dad, where are you going? We're going this way, come on. I said, no, we're going this way. So I go this way, and I get there, about a quarter of a mile into the woods, and I turn a corner, and there it is. It's probably 3 feet, maybe 4 foot in diameter. It is the most beautiful spider web you have ever seen in your life. It is glistening with dew. The light coming through the trees is lit it just like it's illuminated, like you plugged it in. Now you can't tell me that God didn't put me there. I did not have a cell phone then. I did not have a camera. But I took a picture right here. And it is as vivid today as it was 40 years ago. And you can't tell me that that's not God.
It is, amen.
It's my God. Hurt my time here. Sorrows, and number 5 I call sorrows or life circumstances. I have to be really careful with this one because This is where I heard God's voice myself. And you're talking about a loss of life, a sorrow. My late wife died of a status asthmatic attack. And she died within 45 minutes of being in the hospital. And she was there with a full-blown medical staff doing everything they could. And I'm sitting outside in the lobby, and there are people around me because they know what's going on, and then I knew what was going on. But I had this calm that came over me. And very clearly, it said, she's okay, and you'll be okay. That was it. But it was, I looked around to see if somebody was, the doctor was talking or something. There was nobody close. So I heard God's voice. Now that one hurts, but that's what you need to understand is when in that sorrow, if you're open, if you're listening, if you're a part of it, you will hear God's voice. Bible and Scripture. I'm not a Bible scholar. I like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those guys were pretty neat. I like them. I didn't really care too much about the Old Testament at all. To me, that God was a different person. But I go back to my grandmother. My grandmother was probably, my mother's mother, was probably the most saintly woman I ever had in my life. She did very little as far as outgoing, things. She didn't work. She sewed, made her living sewing, and she did work, I guess, at that. She was a member, a wife of a Baptist minister and an undertaker, and she spent her life very, very quietly, but she read her Bible every day, and she talked to God, and God talked to her, and I don't doubt that one bit. But I don't know that much about people that have really gotten information from the Bible. And then I was blessed to move here and to be a beautiful Bible scholar back there. Yes, you. Yes, you are. Number 7, the still small voice. Now, you remember not long ago, Reverend Bill and Cher Holden were here. They're Unity ministers. And they wrote this. They said, sometimes the decibel level of the still small voice is deafening. When this volume is turned up, the calling becomes so loud and clear, not to the audible sense, but to an inner knowingness which is very, very clear. Guidance from deep within, some call it the intuition, others call it still small voice, and some call it God. So no matter what label you put on it, the only way you can take advantage of it is to be still and know. For that still small voice. Dreams and visions is number 8. Does God speak to us, communicate with us through dreams and visions? Oh, yes. Actually, dreams and visions are one of the few, are just a few of the most common modes of communication God uses to speak to us. The cool thing is that God knows what makes each and every one of us tick, right down to the core. And He will often communicate with us in the most unique and special ways, which He designed specifically for us to recognize. Isn't that awesome? Dreams and visions. Number 9, another great one. Music. Does God talk to us through music? If y'all saw Marie sitting here, and you see Marie when she puts her hands on that instrument, and that bow, and she gets her head into it, and she leans forward, and it starts. That's God. That's God talking to you and to us. Chris, when Chris gets in there, and he lowers his head, and that gets hard, And it starts, and that music. Laura playing on that piano. I can't sing, but I love people that sing. When that comes out of them, you know God's speaking to them. God's speaking to you. You gotta be open. You gotta listen. You got to accept it. You got to want it. How about number 10? We made it. Number 10, I said happiness. Does God talk to us or communicate to us through happiness? Let me ask you if you've ever seen a baby and they're sitting in the little high chair and they get tickled and they start laughing. You cannot help but laugh. And you know where that comes from. God's laughing with you. God thinks that's funny. You see puppies rolling around on the floor, falling all over each other. That's happiness. That's God. So, in closing, I would really like to challenge you for the rest of your life, not just next week, not just for the next couple of days, the rest of your life to stop, look, listen, learn to journal, write it down, save some of these things, be open, be patient.